Now at first you might think that this is a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, but you'd be wrong, because this is actually a Bentley T-Series to be exact. And whilst the two manufacturers pretty much made very similar cars up until their parting of the ways in 1998, the key difference was always that a Rolls-Royce was for being driven in, whereas a Bentley, well, that was always for driving. Now this is Bentley's latest car. It's a Flying Spur, and it's steeped in Bentley's heritage with lots of styling cues with a nod to the past, but with very much a vision towards the future, because this Bentley is a hybrid. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Bentley Flying Spur Speed. Please sit yourself down, make yourself very comfortable in the house of cars. Now I have to admit, I am a little bit of a Bentley boy, because I actually owned a 1980 T2, pretty much the same car as the one I showed you right at the start of the video. But here's the thing, when the new age of Bentley came around with the new Continental GT back in 2004, there may have been a slight tendency for them to be favoured by people who like to kick a ball around for a living. But things have changed over the last few years, and the brand has matured again, and I can see it on the rise back up to the aristocracy that once favoured Bentleys. But here's the thing, as they move towards the future, are those owners and buyers of Bentleys really going to embrace electrification with a plug-in hybrid? Well, why don't we stick the new Flying Spur Speed through a road test review in House of Cars and find out. But before we start the review, let's take a look at the main points of the new Bentley Flying Spur Speed. So with the demise of the larger Mulsanne a few years ago, the Flying Spur is now Bentley's flagship four-door saloon car. There are four models to choose from: the standard Flying Spur, the more luxurious Azure, the sporting Speed we have here, and the pinnacle of luxury, the Flying Spur Mulliner. All Flying Spurs now use a twin-turbo 4-litre V8 engine mated to an electric motor that can provide an electric-only running range up to 47 miles. Power ratings vary from 671 brake horsepower to 771 brake horsepower depending on model. There's a huge choice of personalisation in the Flying Spur through the Mulliner programme. And prices start from around £190,000 before options and depending on model. So after years of having to share development and models with Rolls-Royce, Bentley have now had the last couple of decades to finally hone their range into being a proper Bentley again. But as I say, is a plug-in hybrid just a little bit of a step too far for even the most die-hard of Bentley drivers? Well, let's stick it through a House of Cars road test review and find out. Now at first glance, this new Flying Spur doesn't look an awful lot less like the old car that it replaces that was launched back in 2019. In fact, 95% of the design is pretty much as was. But what they've managed to do is they've managed to sort of like finally hone the range now. So there are some differences across the range depending obviously on what model that you do go for. This particular car we've got here is the Speed, so it's dare to suggest a more sort of overtly sporting look to the car. If you go for something like the Azure, it's a bit more luxurious. There's more chrome on it, there's more bright work. Whereas the Speed, well, is a lot more sort of like traditional sort of Bentley, sort of like cross hatching, and everything's blackened out a little bit and it looks much more hunkered down and sporting. But as I say, Bentley's always were a very sporting brand, so it does quite suit the car. Of course, you've got your traditional 4-lamp signature across the front of the car, this big open sort of like wire mesh grille across the front, your winged B on the bonnet, which obviously will illuminates now and obviously will disappear actually underneath the nose cone if somebody tries to steal it. There's a lot more tech on the car, as you'd expect with a modern type of car. So you get the sensors in the front there for the radar guided cruise control, plus this big sort of blistered wart here, which is the forward facing camera. I do feel that could be slightly better integrated, especially being a Bentley. We've got some carbon work down at the bottom there, some carbon splitter down there with a nice pinstripe on it, and again there's some more sort of side vents there just to hide away the front parking sensors. But very much a sort of sporting Bentley, and as I say, if you look at the traditional things such as the big Bentley blowers and the cars from the past, this is very much the look that they've gone for with this car, and I think it works really successfully, and it does look slightly less awkward than the very first Flying Spur that came out. The other thing that doesn't help differentiate this new car from the previous generation is the fact that it doesn't get the new bladed style headlights that you get on the Continental GT Coupe and GTC drop head. It retains the standard 4-lamp design, but what I will say about them is they do look quite special with this almost crystal-like infill in the centre of them to give them almost a jewel-like design feature. Inside profile, that's where I think they've managed to capture the essence of some of the more elegant Bentleys from the past, and it comes down to this line here that comes out from the nose cone and then just comes along this strong shoulder line, and then the secondary one here that comes over this rear haunch there reminds me of the old Continentals from the 1950s. Now wheel sizes start at 21 inches depending on model. This Speed gets 22s, which these cars have. Now you can see they're done in that kind of gunmetal finish to give this particular spec we've got here a much more sort of sporting sort of like presence. You've got this vent in the side wing here, or this piece of plastic trim, which is slightly disappointing, I have to admit, but in the sort of B shape. And of course you get the Speed badge down here on this particular car, and of course depending on model will depend obviously on the badge that you get. But again, the more sporting look of the carbon fibre that runs down the side skirt there as well, just to give a little bit more sort of like presence, lowered to the ground. Body colour door handles, obviously the blackened out pillars here, privacy glass on the back as you'd expect to find. But as I say, depending obviously on the model you go for, on the trim you go for, will depend on whether it's blackened out or whether it's chrome. And of course the big difference with this car, it's got a secondary flap that's on this rear wing here, because of course this is a plug-in hybrid, and that's where you plug it in. Now the rear of the Flying Spur, it's probably the, dare I suggest, and I hate using the word, but maybe the blandest area of the car, but it's still quite elegant, and I think they've again managed to capture a lot of the old models in this new car. But the rear end of it, you've got the sort of signature B rear tail lights that you got on the Flying Spur. Of course, being the Speed model with the black sort of pack on it, you've got the blackened out winged B there, or the Bentley lettering. Is that really needed when we've got that? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. This lovely little carbon lip spoiler across the top of it, and of course the usual sort of tech that you'd expect to find. There's a reversing camera with a washer nozzle underneath there, and of course you get reversing sensors, and like as I say, the rest of the car, you've got this carbon rear diffuser area here with the pinstripe in it, and these lovely oval exhaust pipes. So what do we think? Elegant, restrained, but with an air of menace about it. That's what I think, and I think that's something that Bentley have always done very, very well. And as I say, as the Flying Spur has matured through the model since it was first introduced, I think it's become less awkward, and dare I suggest less of a four-door Continental GT and more of a model in its own right. Maybe it lacks a little bit of the presence of the larger Bentley models that used to come before it, such as the Arnage and the Mulsanne, and going back through the Continental Rs, but you can certainly see a lot of Bentley's heritage within this new design, and I for one think this is a really elegant looking car. But it doesn't really matter what I think, it matters what you think though, because you might be interested in buying one of these. So what do you think about it? Whatever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if there is a downside with this new plug-in hybrid, it's boot space, believe it or not. Despite being a really big car, the boot space is just 346 litres, and that's down from 420 of the previous car. It's still a reasonably large and usable space, but there's no doubt about it, it's certainly a drop. And as I say, if you're the type of chap or chapess that likes to grand tour with your Bentley, then dare I suggest you might have to rethink how much luggage you take with you. Unless, of course, you've got someone that can maybe take her on beforehand for you. Now, as much as I say the Bentley is a car for driving, there will be some people that want to be driven in a Bentley. So how does it fare in the back seat? Well, what do you think? Sumptuous is what I would suggest. That's exactly what you get back here. So of course we've got the two individual rear seats in this particular car, and there's plenty of space as you'd expect. There's plenty of lounging space to sit back, and the seats are beautifully sculpted here. And of course these soft pillowy head restraints just to rest your head back for when Jeeves just wants to relax and take it a little bit slower on those twisting A roads. Of course you get things such as cup holders here, there's a wireless charging pad, there's also a rear screen in the car as well for controlling certain elements of it as well. You've got some storage in here as well where you can keep your, I don't know, keep your Murray mints in there as well, and of course you've got the mat pockets on the backs of the seats there for that, and these are reclinable seats as well in this particular car with memory positioning as well. So yes, it's not exactly lacking looking in opulence back here. But it's the craftsmanship of the interior that we've come to expect from Bentley. And it's very much in evidence here. And this is what lifts this car above, say, things such as the BMW 7 Series, even things such as the Mercedes-Maybach S-Class. This is on another level up there. And of course, it's very much on a par with the likes that you would get from Rolls-Royce from their new Goodwood facility. It's definitely a Bentley. Now, this is where obviously you can sense that you're in a Bentley, and it's not just a car that's made. You feel that it's been made for you. It's been tailor-made exactly how you want it, and it just oozes class and opulence in here. But there's still an awful lot of sort of like physical controls around the car, and it does take quite a lot of learning, you know, when you're around it. So there are an awful lot of buttons to sort of like try and figure out where everything sort of like goes and what actually everything controls. But once you figure it all out, there's something quite nice about the Bentley in terms of, you know, the knurled sort of like metal, the organ stop, air vents, you know, the knurled metal dial controls here, and for the ventilation control, the way they click like the bezel on a nice diver's watch. And of course you get the usual lovely Bentley clock in the centre there. It's a very nice, well laid out dashboard. You see in the car, you go stop start button here when the whole car just sort of like turns on, and then everything whirs into place exactly where you expect it. And you've got this lovely big screen in the centre of the dashboard. But of course, if you don't want that, you can have a different type of screen, because it's a rotating screen where you can have an instrumentation panel there. I mean, that just looks fabulous. That's again sort of like old school meeting new tech. I think that's a brilliant feature. I love that. And the way it just matches up is just beautiful. And the way it whirs and moves and just absolute silence is, well, something to behold. Now, in terms of interior personalisation, you've got something like 15 standard veneers. There's then a further 13 dual veneers that you can have. Then there's 5 technical finishes, in other words, metals and different types of finishes across there. And that's before you get into the Mulliner program, where they can tailor make something exactly for you. But it's the stitching across the top of the dash, as I say, it's the metal work, it's the fact that everything you touch has this nice cool sort of finish to it and just feels like it should be here. That's what stands a Bentley apart from other things. Now, don't get me wrong, there are obviously some areas that you can see that are parts from other cars, and obviously Bentley is owned by the Volkswagen Group, and it does make sense from an economies of scale side of view that certain minor switchgear will be shared. But if you're going to share minor switchgear, shouldn't you share it with something like an Audi or something? I mean, that makes sense. It's a fabulous driving position. You know, the seats, they move electronically exactly how you want them. They're figure hugging when you want them to be. They've got massage function. They're heated, they're ventilated as you would expect. They've also got memory positioning, and they move in every way possible. You've also got an electronically controlled steering column as well, so that will adjust for reach and for rake as well. Beautiful little 3-spoke sort of like steering wheel, just the right sort of size, and even though it's a slightly smaller wheel and it's a big car, it allows you to position it really nicely on the road. And everything falls to hand quite easily. So as I say, whilst there is a lot of it to take in, there's also a lot of it that just is at a finger stretch away. So adjusting your temperature is exactly where your hand falls to. And as I say, it's just this beautiful tactile dial that you just turn to increase or decrease your temperature. As I say, these organ stops to open and close vents, to adjust the volume on the radio. It's a knob exactly where you expect to find it. So everything just sits nicely where you want it to be as a driver. So as I say, a Bentley is very much still a driver's car. Instrumentation panel, that's fully digitized now, so you've got this screen in front of you where you can vary the different views that you have. So depending obviously on what you want to see, you can either have twin dials, you can have a singular dial, you can have no dials whatsoever, then with just numerics pushed right to the side with more graphics in the center. You've got trip computer available to you. It can obviously show you things such as your navigation up here as well. You can have such things such as your ADAS control systems there too, and as I say, there's just an infinite amount of configurations that are available to these dials. But as I say, if you're familiar with, dare I suggest, the likes of Audi, then a lot of that will be familiar to you. However, it uses Bentley font, and there's a lot of Bentley referencing throughout the whole thing. But much like the outside of the car that references the older models, the interior does exactly the same. So whilst there's a lot of high tech and modernity in here, there's still a lot of traditional craftsmanship that you would come to expect from a brand such as Bentley. Audio systems by name, you know, fantastic, you know, these beautiful sort of like milled aluminium speaker grills, your big B on top of the traditional physical gear shift control in the center here, and as I say, a stop start button there, and then all your mode buttons down behind end. Everything feels sort of cool to the touch that's metal. It's nice to see them not going for like silver painted plastic, but actual sort of like metal work in the car, which is what you expect, and dare I suggest what you get in a Bentley. Now, forgive the iPad because I am getting a bit old and I do need to remember some numbers. So all Flying Spurs now get this 4-litre twin turbocharged V8, and as I say, it is a plug-in hybrid, and that's mated to an 8-speed dual clutch transmission, which is provided from ZF. And between those two elements is a 188 brake horsepower synchronous electric motor, and that's fed from a 25.9 kilowatt hour battery. Now, that's 43% larger than the previous hybrid that came with the V6 engine in the old Flying Spur. The net result is 671 brake horsepower if you go for the standard Flying Spur or the Flying Spur Azure, or if you go for this speed model or the Mulliner, that power increases to 771 brake horsepower. Traction's provided by an active all-wheel drive system, and Bentley say that if you do want to, you can drive this in EV only mode at distances up to 47 miles depending on conditions. Now, you've got a choice of 4 models within the Bentley Flying Spur range. You've got all of which use a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine. You've got the standard Flying Spur and the Azure, which uses Bentley's high-performance hybrid system. It's still, let's say, the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine, and that produces 671 brake horsepower and 930 newton meters of torque. That will get this Leviathan from a standstill to 62 miles an hour in just 3.8 seconds. If that's not enough for you, then you can have this Speed or a Mulliner, which gives the ultra high performance hybrid system, which ups the power to 771 brake horsepower and 1000 newton meters of torque, which will slice the 0 to 60 time down from 3.8 to 3.3 seconds. This is a quick old bus of a car. Now, the other thing about it, it does that through an 8-speed dual clutch ZF transmission. And it does it through all 4 wheels, so it's all-wheel drive. It also has all-wheel steering as well, which helps with the agility of the car, because whilst it's the physicality of the Flying Spur is a big car, it doesn't feel it. Now, I'm not suggesting it turns it into an M3, but it does sort of like just make the car just a little bit more manoeuvrable and just that little bit more pin sharp on the flowing bends. Okay, now the other thing that you get with the car is Bentley's dynamic ride system, which has 48 volt active anti-roll bars on the car, and twin valve dampers. So again, all that power, being nothing without control, as Pirelli would say, you do get a lot of control with the car. So as I say, 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering, active ride, and as I say, some really clever damping system on the car. Now at the moment, I'm driving the car along in the Bentley mode as it is, and it should give, according to Bentley's figures, up to 47 miles of electric only driving range, and it goes into that mode quite easily, and you can see on the little dash here that it's telling me that it's in hybrid and it's in EV drive. However, as I go through this national speed limit sign, put my foot down, the engine just kicks in and the whole world just seems to erupt, and it just seems to turn the whole planet on its axis as all that torque is deployed to the road surface. This is a really quick car, and it's also a very enjoyable car to punt down a twisty road. Now don't get me wrong, you'll probably find something like a Porsche Panamera, maybe the Mercedes AMG S-Class, who's maybe a little bit more pin sharp in the middle of corners at finding those apexes, but I tell you what, this thing doesn't disgrace itself at all considering the size of it. It's way sportier than you would get from something like, say, a Rolls-Royce Ghost. Now of course you've got different drive modes with the car. I mean, that's me in sort of like Bentley mode. I can then move it into sport mode. That wasn't even its sportiest mode, and you put your foot down now. Oh, this V8, I have to say, it might be a bit of heresy, I don't know, but I tell you what, it just seems to suit the car's character better than the old W12, and it's certainly a better engine than the old V6 that you used to get in the old hybrid of the car. So it's much more Bentley-like, dare I suggest, as you sort of like, put your foot down, as you smash your foot towards the carpet. It really feels like a proper big Bentley. I was driving, the old Mulsanne Turbo R earlier, and again, it's the same, a big car but with load of power. The brakes are phenomenal as well, as you would expect for a car that weighs as much as this, and you'd want, dare I suggest, you put your foot down and your face feels like it's just about to drop off. It is a really impressive car. And as I say, there is an element of you that sort of just feels that Bentley have managed to modernise a sort of like a traditional style of car that they've been producing for all these years that still feels like a Bentley. You know, I don't know if that makes sense. Have you ever driven one of the old Bentleys? I mean, as I used to own an old T2, I'm not suggesting it feels like that, but you know, it certainly looks like it with the wood and the leather inside. But then all of a sudden, as I say, when you want to get a bit of a shuffle on, when the road opens up and you've given Jeeves the day off and you want to drive it for yourself and you find yourself on a really nice open A road, then if you find yourself behind the wheel of a Flying Spur, especially the speed model, you're going to really enjoy it. You really are. The handling is just, as I say, there are sharper cars, but they don't offer the same blend of comfort and luxury as well as that performance. So as an overall package, that's where the Flying Spur really, really wins. And with this new hybrid system, you are sort of like facing into sort of like the modern world of electrification. And it's just got enough. Whereas I say, if you want to slip from your country abode into the office in town and you just want to have a slightly more clearer conscience, you can do that. And you can still do it behind the wheel of a Bentley. And after all, isn't that one of the best things ever? The ride quality is fantastic, as I say, even on these massive big 22-inch alloy wheels on these sort of like pitted roads round about sort of like, you know, Crewe where I am today. You know, there's an element of you just feels sort of like, you know, the suspension working, and you just know that, you know, if you had passengers, they would feel cosseted in this car. No, it's not floaty. It doesn't feel, as I say, as sort of like magic carpet as, say, something like a Rolls-Royce, but it doesn't feel as detached as those cars either, because, as I say, it's giving you that best of both worlds situation with it. And that was really where, as I say, the Bentley sort of wins at this. But it feels like a mechanical car. It feels like a proper, true, blue-blooded, you know, Bentley at the end of the day. And that is exactly what Bentley should be providing us with. And that is exactly what they've done with this car. This thing is absolutely 100% phenomenal. And if this is the future that Bentley are looking at with hybridization and electrification, I tell you what, we've nothing to worry about, because the old magic is still here. Now, as vulgar as it might seem, we are going to have to talk about price. And that could be the elephant in the room, because let's be honest, it's a Bentley, so it's not exactly going to be inexpensive, shall we say. So as I say, there are 4 models within the range. There's a standard Flying Spur, and that comes in at £190,200 before options. Then you move to the Azure, which is a slightly more luxurious and opulent version, if you like, which is £228,900. Now, both of those cars, as I say, get the lower powered version of the hybrid drivetrain. Still 671 horsepower. Hardly low powered, is it? This speed was the start of sort of like the ultra high performance hybrids, 771 horsepower, and for this you'll need to find £239,000 before options. And then of course then there's the top of the range Mulliner, which gets the same driveline as this with a more powerful hybrid drivetrain, and that kicks off at £258,000. Now let me just give you an idea of this particular car here, because there are quite a lot of options you can have, and this one is displaying quite a few of those, and they're not exactly cheap. So this Cypress bespoke Mulliner paintwork with the Cypress coloured bright work to the exterior is £19,500. The carbon fibre body kit with the accented pinstripe, £12,020. The name personal audio system, £7,350. The touring specification is over £6,000. The rotating display, that's £5,300. The 22-inch alloy wheels and the dark satin finish is £5,200. And if you want your illuminated B badge on the front, well, that's going to set you back $4 large. So, to give you an idea, this particular car, as it sits here, is £298,415 of your your English pounds, sir. Let's just say that spending over £300,000 on a Flying Spur isn't exactly difficult to do. But then again, this is a Bentley and it is very luxurious, which, as I say, luxury doesn't come cheap. Right, okay, as I say, it's not inexpensive, this car, which means the competition you're going to be looking at against the Flying Spur, well, that's not going to be cheap either, is it? Let's be fair, we are talking about the upper echelons of the motoring world here. So, naturally, you're going to think about something as Rolls-Royce, and of course it has the Ghost, which is its slightly smaller, dare I suggest more sporting style of saloon. Not exactly a cheap car that either. So that's probably the Flying Spur's main rival. But you might also look at, dare I suggest, if you'll pardon me saying it, more mainstream rivals as well, such as BMW. And of course, its range-topping BMW M760 LE could be a competitor for this car, because they're not exactly inexpensive either. They're well into six figures now before you start to option those up. Mercedes do offer quite a luxurious version of their S-Class, because of course there's the Mercedes-Maybach S-Class, and the Maybach obviously is the German equivalent, dare I suggest, of Bentley and Rolls-Royce that's owned by Mercedes-Benz. So naturally you're going to see that as a rival as well. Jaguar are going to be getting in the act as well, because they want to see themselves as a new Bentley rival. So of course when their car comes out, which is probably going to be all electric as well, that's going to be well into six figures too. And would you see a Range Rover as a rival for a Bentley? I think these days you would, because they are certainly much more luxury car than off-roader. And of course people's tastes are very different, but maybe you might just see the Bentley Bentayga as a more natural rival for a Range Rover. But irrespective of that, there is still quite a lot of competitors for this car. So, the Bentley Flying Spur Hybrid, a contradiction in terms or the perfect evolution? I think it's very much the latter, because let's remember, this is a Bentley, and it's the way that Bentley seem to have done it, the way that they've retained all the traditional values that people love about Bentley, whilst gently ushering in this new era of electrification in a very subtle way, that I think is going to make sure it appeals to both traditional Bentley customers and win over some new customers. No, it's not the most efficient hybrid in the world, it's not the best hybrid in the world. But that's not really the point. The point is that Bentley have done it at all, and they've done it without losing any of their soul and purpose. And that is probably the most Bentley thing of all. Thank you for watching another road test review on House of Cars. Please remember to make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and once you've done that, make sure your notifications are turned on so you don't miss another one as soon as it goes live. If you've enjoyed this week's review, and I sincerely hope you have, make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course, as always, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about Bentley's new plug-in hybrid. Does it tempt you? Would it tempt you out of your Mercedes-Benz S-Class or your Rolls-Royce Ghost? Or would you rather they hadn't bothered at all? Would you rather see them go all electric? Whatever that may be, let me know your thoughts down below. Now, if you're into social media, you can find me across on Instagram, and it's at House of Cars 1973. And remember, whether or not it is a large car or a small car, an old car or a new car, a slow car or a, well, very fast car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.